New Saints offense under Klint Kubiak will shock the NFL. We are here, Saints Now by Chat Sports. Just erase the Chat Sports Saints Now by the one and only Trizzy Trace. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and listen and see exactly how the Saints offense, the new Saints offense, will shock the NFL under our Lord and Savior, the new offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints, Klint Kubiak.
I stumbled across an article that Ian Rapoport posted on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, about a bunch of different teams getting their mini camp started this week and what they're kind of expecting around each of those teams. And for the New Orleans Saints, they
Let me say this real quick before we start. I love watching Trace's videos because it's a whirlwind. It's an absolute roller coaster. I like to think they just throw him in a warehouse with green screens everywhere. He's jumping in between transitions. He's going from set to set. He's kind of got a young Billy Mays to him. Very energetic. You never know what to expect. So I can't wait to see how many different frames they have him in, how many different transitions the video goes through. By the end of it, he'll be sweating, huffing, and puffing. There will not be a break in this 12 minutes for him. I can tell you that. A gray sweatshirt controversial because, as we all know, or a gray shirt. Because the more you sweat, nothing you can do. So as energetic as Trace is, that shirt's probably going to go through hell.
They said, how is Klint Kubiak's installation going? So we're going to discuss all of that, go through what Kevin Patra said, and a lot more.
I'm telling you, it's crazy because, I mean, you better get ready, okay? It's one thing to sit back, kick back on your feet, and just watch a video. Not when you get Saints Now by Chat Sports involved. There's going to be a lot of call-outs. Right now, boom, sub for Saints dub.
Today's video, but don't jinx it, Who Dat Nation. Sub for Saints dubs. Every time you subscribe, gets the New Orleans Saints another win this season. So let's get to 28,000 ASAP. Subscribe today because we all...
So using that logic, the Saints are expected to go 27,884-0 this year.
Also have minicamp starting tomorrow. We're going to be giving you guys updates around the New Orleans Saints, takeaways, all sorts of stuff. There's injury news, attendance, all that kind of updates. So be sure to subscribe so that way you know what's going on with the black and gold as we head into the 2024 season. But let's kick it over to Kevin Patra. I wanted to break down this article piece by piece because I think it does a good job of,
all right.
What could we expect for New Orleans this year? Kevin Patra is saying every club in the NFC South is breaking in a new offensive coordinator, but none intrigues me as much as Klint Kubiak importing.
Yeah, I mean, great point and very true. We hear a lot about the Saints changing of the guard and the new playbook, new offense, new coaching staff, all that stuff, but every team is doing that. The NFC South is a interesting division because of all the change, play callers and whatnot. So the Saints, of course, with Klint Kubiak, the Falcons with Zach Robinson, the Bucks with Liam Cohen, and the Panthers with, who cares, ladies and gentlemen? Let's be honest here. They could have Bill Walsh, Bill Belichick. They could have every single coach that's ever coached. It's not going to matter in Carolina. Okay, and out of the new coaches, I do feel most comfortable with Klint Kubiak. I feel like we have the best new OC of the new OCs. Liam Cohen in Tampa gets a lot of credit because he was in Los Angeles when Baker was there. And people are like, well, Baker, he knows Baker. It's like, well, yeah, but that stint lasted how long? And the Rams decided to move on from Baker, so it wasn't exactly the greatest relationship. Oh, and arguably the greatest offensive mind in the NFL is also in Los Angeles, who I would think has his fingerprints on Baker Mayfield much more than Liam Cohen.
A new offense to the Bayou. So here are the new offensive coordinators in the NFC South. We obviously got Kubiak in New Orleans, Zach Robinson.
Brad Idzik going to work? Probably not.
The former pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach over with the Los Angeles Rams, is in Atlanta. Liam Cohen, the Kentucky Wildcats offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach last year, is now in Tampa Bay. And Brad Idzik, he is with the Carolina Panthers. Last year, he was the wide receivers coach for the Buccaneers, so he does have a little bit of familiarity with the NFC.
Well, also, it's classic tales old as time here. Panthers head coach Dave Canales came from Tampa, bringing his guys over. Idzik is one of his guys.
South, but I will say this: Klint Kubiak is definitely the most intriguing option.
Yes,
but
agreed.
I do like
Agreed.
Zach Robinson. I think he is a smart offensive coach, and he does come from that Shanahan West Coast style offensive tree. So it's going to be kind of cool to see, or not Shanahan, the McVay coaching tree. So it'll be cool to see the McVay versus the Shanahan coaching tree this year.
Ooh, same thing. McVay is part of the Shanahan tree.
In the NFC South. But back to Patra saying the Saints have run a version of the Sean Payton offense since the George W. Bush administration, importing.
Patra, good to see Kevin Patra has been watching my channel. Yes, I've said that many times. We all know that, and it's true. The Saints have done the same thing for 20 years, since 2005, pre-Katrina. It's crazy to think about, but it's the truth. Whether it's Sean Payton or Drew Brees or a combination of the two, or Sean Payton suspended and it's Pete Carmichael, or Sean Payton's gone and it's Pete Carmichael, one way or the other, they've done the exact same thing for 20 years. So just that alone, I think, makes the Saints more intriguing than the other teams. The fact that we are going to see for the first time, think about it. Like, if you're an 18-year-old Saints fan, this is the first time in your life you will see a different system. 19-year-old Saints fan, first time in your life you will see a different system. So that it's very rare. It's rare to see a team stick with the same system and all of that for that long. So, you look at the Falcons, you look at the Bucs, you look at the Panthers, they kind of are moving in and out of systems, moving in and out of quarterbacks. Like the Bucs are a great example, right? The Bucs with Tom Brady are very different than the Bucs with Baker Mayfield. The Bucs with Bruce Arians is very different than the Bucs with Todd Bowles. So, it shows you how fast teams can transition and how fast a coaching staff or a quarterback or an OC or however you want to phrase it, comes in, comes out. For the Saints, it's just been the same.
A Kubiak Shanahan style scheme should freshen up the joint and provide a different look for a club entering a pivotal season under Dennis Allen. So I do agree. This is a big season for Dennis Allen. I do think that this year could be the last year that we see DA if this season just goes completely off the rails. Now, if New Orleans makes the playoffs, he's going to be back next year. Whether you like it or not, I do believe.
Yeah, it's so funny, too, because you have a lot of people, including me, a lot of people think Dennis Allen is and has been a bad head coach. No doubt, right? I also think he's a great defensive coordinator. I think I've said a million times, he is the best defensive coordinator, the best defensive mind in the NFL. So now we get to see what happens. Let's just pretend that Klint Kubiak is the next Sean McVay. He is the next Mike McDaniel, the next Kyle Shanahan, whatever. He's the next great offensive mind. We're just hypothetical here, okay? Let's say that happens. Would it be crazy to believe that if we have a great offensive coordinator, let's not even go that far. Let's say the next Ben Johnson, the next Bobby Slowick. Is it that crazy to believe that Dennis, if all he had to do was deal with the defense, that the Saints could be really good? And Dennis's whole horrible head coach, all those problems, all of that, could kind of go away? It's not insane. It's not insane. Now, Dennis is on the hot seat, so we probably do have to win. I would say at least, it's hard to imagine them bringing Dennis back if we win less than 9 games. I think if we go 9-8, I think they'd bring him back if the offense looks good. If we drop, if we're 8 wins, 7 wins, 6 wins, I think Dennis probably goes. And it's one of those things where optics are going to be really important. Optics will be important almost more than results, because if the defense is good and the offense looks better, it's just kind of apparent that we're in a growing period. At that point, do you fire Dennis? So it's going to be a tough question for Mickey and the gang if they drop under that 9-win kind of barrier.
I believe Dennis Allen will be the coach of the New Orleans Saints if they make the postseason. But in terms of what we can expect from Klint Kubiak's new offense, I've shown this graphic before, but we'll kind of run through this really quick. It's going to be a West Coast offense, a lot of wide zone schemes, expect a lot of wide zone runs and whatnot. He says he wants to be grounded and run the football, especially on first and second down, and he wants to be a lot more effective in the red zone. He understood that New Orleans last year was not effective inside the 20-yard line. However, he wants to bring that, elevation of offense and offensive success back to the black and gold, and he does incorporate a high usage of play action plays.
All true. Yeah, the Shanahan playbook / tree, whatever, people think that West Coast means throwing the ball all over the place. People think that they think of the Rams, they think of the Niners, and they think of the Dolphins, and they think of these explosive offenses, and that's true. They are explosive, but they aren't explosive the way that like the St. Louis Rams' greatest show on turf was explosive. They're explosive because of the run game. So it is a run-first offense. It is a run-first, run-based. Even the Rams, if you watch them, what do? Run the football and play action. That's it. It's really simple. So that's what this is going to be. People keep saying, like, we don't know what we're going to see until the season starts. That's not true. We do know what this offense is going to look like, and I've explained it a million times. But it's going to be run first, play action, heavy movement pre-snap. A lot of the sets are going to look similar pre-snap until the motion starts. A lot of those sets will be, kind of the same base. It'll be multiple tight ends, multiple running backs. You won't see as many 11 personnel sets, but just 3 wide receivers. So, it's tried and true. It's tried and true, and it works. It's if it is run efficiently, and I think we have the pieces that will make it run efficiently.
A lot of pre-snap movement, and like I said, efficiency in the red zone. And I do expect to see Taysom Hill / Derek Carr get out of pocket at times when they're throwing the ball, and I expect a lot of attacking across the middle of the field, which is something that the Saints, when the offense was humming, they did a lot of. And reports from OTAs are really, really positive around all of those things. We're seeing exactly that be incorporated to the Saints offense at practices thus far. And I do.
Yeah, I mean, it actually has been positive. Like everything I hear from OTAs or from anything, whether it's from the practice itself or just the vibes of the locker room or the off seasons or the off the field events, everything is crazy positive. The energy seems to be really high. And I think a lot of that has to do with just getting rid of last year. Like last year was such a drain on so many people. I mean, how many times were we watching? I mean, we watched probably every single Alvin Kamara interview last season, a post-game interview. There were some of them where he was downright like dejected. He was sad. You could tell like the players were just, it was all over their face that that season was really wearing on them, whether it was losing, whether it was the fans booing them, whether it was Pete Carmichael, whether it was the infighting from players, the clickiness of certain player groups. Like there was a lot happening, a lot of negativity in the locker room. So hearing all of that positivity is a good start. Now, will that last if we lose? No, obviously not. Winning is the greatest Band-Aid. So we do have to win, but it is nice to hear positivity when last year all we heard was negativity.
I think that it's interesting and important to note that with Kubiak, the offensive, tempo has been much, much higher over than it was with Pete Carmichael last year. It's been a lot more vocal, a lot more efficient, and a lot more effective at practices. And I think that that's really, really important, especially when it's your first year as an offensive coordinator. Establishing an offensive culture and an offensive identity is important, and you have to start doing that at this part of the offseason.
He nailed that one. I mean, 100% right. Like having that culture, having that identity, that's something we just didn't have. We just did not have an identity. We did not have rhyme or reason for what we were doing. From game to game, it was totally different. One game, Alvin Kamara would have 19 catches. The second game, he would have 3 catches. We had no reason for doing things. Sometimes Kamara would start the game. Sometimes Joel Williams would start the game. Sometimes, it was just, we were just doing things to do it. There was no identity. And in the NFL, where scheme is so important in today's day and age, not having a scheme, not having a culture, not having identity is a very controversial yet brave way to go about it. So just instilling that identity is so important to what we're going to see. Good Lord have mercy, look at all this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, pop quiz. Okay, pop quiz. If y'all been listening to the channel, you will know this. Which stat up here, there's 5 stats, which stat up here do you think is the most important stat when you're reviewing a box score? We reviewed every box score every week last year, and we talked about this every time, so y'all should know. If you're new to the channel, that's fine. Well, you'll get caught up to speed quickly. The most important stat up here, let me move so you can see them. All right, the most important stat, YPP, yards per play, is the most important stat out of all 5 of these. And the fact that we were 20th, like this is a good example right here. So points per game is way less important than YPP. So if you see points per game and you're like, well, we're 10th, that's a pretty good offense. But then you see we're 20th in YPP, this is much closer to where we actually were offensively. So I would say last year we were probably closer to like the 17th, 18th, somewhere in their offense, which is right on with the YPP, than like a top 10 offense as far as points per game. So statistics can be difficult when you're breaking stuff down because there's so many stats available now and so many stats that people used to really care about, like points per game, are now, we know they're not that valuable. So YPP is the one that going into this year, we're going to talk about a lot as far as, okay, last year our YPP was 5.1. What's it going to be this year? So that's the main thing that we're going to look at, comparing Carmichael's offense with Kubiak's as far as year versus year.
Season. And if we take a trip down memory lane, the offense of 2023, I mean, it was Jekyll and Hyde. Like, there would be games where, I mean, it was humming, things were rolling, and it looked really, really good.
No, that's not true. It was not Jekyll and Hyde. It was now I'm going to mix it up. It was Hyde and Hyde. Is Hyde Dr. Jekyll? Which one's the bad one? Dr. Jekyll is the Hyde is the monster, right? Okay, somebody correct me down below. This is like a King Midas situation all over again, the King Solomon situation. The problem with the Saints offense last year was that the only time it looked good, the only time it was humming, don't look at me like that, Trace. The only time it was humming was when we were in like a 2-minute type situation, a fast up-tempo, 2-minute style offense, or we were down 21 and we were just moving. We had like the up-tempo kind of thing going, or the end of the game, or the end of the half. Now, pop quiz number 2. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that that's when we were the most efficient? I'll tell you why. Because it forced us to have an identity. We didn't have an identity. But when you're in a 2-minute drill, you inherit that as your identity. So then what happens? Shorter routes. Plays get shortened. Less time in the pocket. Shorter dropbacks. All of that, more dump passes and more screens to the running backs. All of that happens, right? So it forced Carmichael into an identity. If we would have just ran a 2-minute style offense the entire season, we'd have been much better off. Much better off. So the only time that the Saints really looked good or really looked efficient is when we were kind of rolling with that offense.
But then there were games where it was like, oh my God, can we get a first down? And that is something that was extremely frustrating. And for me, I want to see offensive consistency. That's the big thing for me. The points per game, sure, they were okay, but the yards per play were terrible. The third down percentage was extremely average, very bad in the red zone. And the yards per game, like, sure, there's a lot of empty yards. There was a lot of
yards per game doesn't matter at all. The stats you can throw out is points per game, yards per game. You can keep yards per play. You can keep YPP, third down percentage, and red zone scoring. You can keep all those.
End of the game yards and, pointless drives that didn't end in touchdowns or ended in points or ended in points, and then they...
Also, another example about the identity. What is the opposite of the 2-minute drill? What's the opposite of that? If that's when we were the best, what's the opposite? The opposite is the first possession of the game, right? That's when it's the slowest. That's when there is no emphasis on time. There is no emphasis on game script. It's just you playing, right? It's just your script. It's just your plays. And that's when we were the worst. Saints scored once, I think, all season long on what the hell happened to Trace's hand here? Dr. Hook or Mr. Hook type situation here. Mr. Hook? Or was it just Hook? Captain Hook. Jesus. I'm mixing up Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Captain Hook. My God, ladies and gentlemen, it's hot out here. It's hot out here.
It just wasn't enough. It was so unbelievably frustrating last year for the Saints offense. So I want to see consistency, and I want to see proper usage of the weapons and scheming up those weapons to use them at their best strength.
Scheming up the weapons is very important. Having a reason to use the weapon.
That is my biggest thing for the Saints this year. Are you excited about the new Saints offense? Everything I just said, I think we'll see a lot more of in 2024 rather than we did in 2023. So just give me a yes or no. What say you, Who Dat Nation? Are you pumped up about a new offense for the first time since, Shit, I was in elementary school. So, really quick reminder, Father's Day is right around the corner, and if you haven't already, you need to get...
Yeah, I mean, we'll skip this. I didn't know they sold shirts. Number one dad, if you're... I mean... if you don't have your Father's Day gift yet, chatsports.com/SaintsDad. Go take a look at it. See what Trace has going on here. Support the boy. But I had no idea they sold shirts over there.
Gear today. So back to Kevin Patra. The run scheme could help unleash Alvin Kamara, and the QB-friendly offense would give Derek Carr more answers. The Saints have grown bland under Dennis Allen. Kubiak can be the hero that finally gets New Orleans back into the postseason.
Kevin Patra is nailing it. I mean, this is very true. This offense is very quarterback friendly because it's leaning on that run game. It's leaning on play action. It's leaning on all of that. It's really taken a lot of it off of Carr. He just has to kind of be efficient and just run this blueprint that Kubiak has. And yeah, it has been super bland. And not to mention that because the Saints have done the same thing for 20 years, the fact that they're doing something new is going to throw defenses off. Defenses aren't going to know what to do. They're not going to know how to prepare for the Saints until middle of the season to end of the season. So even that is a benefit.
Now, I will say it's a little bit unfair to say under Dennis Allen, it's his fault. He's a defensive coach. But ever since Dennis Allen has taken over, the offense has been dull. And that is a fact. So I agree. Yeah. I don't think it's solely Dennis Allen's fault because he hasn't been calling the offensive plays. But at the end of the day, it is his fault because he's the head coach. Could have, made a different decision with all.
This part is difficult because Dennis Allen is the head coach, sure. So he can't be absolved of all the blame, right? But when the Saints defense was horrible during the Peyton Breeze era and we were going 7-9, no, I don't think people were sitting there saying like, man, our defense is terrible. We've got to fire Sean Payton because the offense was sweet. We knew what the problem was. The problem was the defense. And we knew Sean Payton had nothing to do with the defense. So it's one of those things where, like, Allen is going to catch a lot of the blame for sure. But there is part of it where it's like, well, what really could he do? Like, what really could he do last year or the year before to fix Carmichael's problem? Should that be on Allen or should that be on Loomis? Should it be on Loomis like, hey, man, you picked Carmichael to do this. Like, you trusted Carmichael to do this. Like, this was your fault. This is your problem. And to Loomis's credit, it took him 2 years, but he said, okay, no doubt. Let's get him out of here. Let's get somebody new. So it's just a different NFL. I keep talking about coordinators and head coaches, but 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the head coach was the head coach. The head coach was the authority figure on everything. He was calling plays. He was calling timeouts. He had everything, right? Now it's so specific. Like, coordinators are so important, and some head coaches don't do anything. Some head coaches don't call the defense or the offense. They're strictly the culture person. They're strictly the logistics person. They're strictly the locker room. Like Dan Campbell. If the Lions have a problem offensively, one of the last people in the building that would be able to impact that is Dan Campbell. So it's just an interesting NFL. It's an interesting landscape to where head coaches are always going to be the scapegoat. But I agree everything that Trace is saying about the offense being bad last year, but simultaneously, like, there's really nothing for Allen to do. Like, if we would have fired Allen last year and kept Carmichael and brought in a new defensive coach to be the head coach, would you expect the offense to change? No, right? So that's why I'm kind of interested to see what this will look like with Allen as being the head coach and the DC if we have a really good offensive coordinator. Because we have seen in the past what a really good offensive coordinator, Sean Payton, can do for someone like Allen. I understand that Payton was the head coach, Allen's the head coach. Like, I understand it's not apples to apples, but it is an interesting little paradox.
Offensive coordinator. I understand why they went with Carmichael. But in terms of Derek Carr, he just needs to be good in 2024. I don't think he needs to be great. I don't think he needs to have a Hall of Fame season. I don't think he needs to have MVP numbers. I think he just needs to be good. I think he needs to be serviceable. I think he needs to be a little bit above league average. And that's what they're paying him, a little bit above league average. So if you can get that from Derek Carr, that is really, really good things for the New Orleans Saints. Because of the amount of offensive weapons, it's not like they're lacking talent. It's just a matter of using the talent correctly. And I think that Derek Carr is a smart guy in between the ears. However, he just needs to be a more effective and more productive player than he was in 2023.
I mean, Trace is obviously watching the channel. I agree 100%. We do not need Carr to be the MVP. And that's why it blows my mind when I come on a video or I put a video out there and the comments are like, "You'll never win with Carr." And it's like, I'm not even talking about Carr. I need Carr to be the 15th best quarterback in the NFL. And people are like, I mean, it's such a Carr apologist. How can you expect to win games with Derek Carr? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, I'm asking him to be the 16th best quarterback in the NFL. I'm asking him to be bang average. I'm asking him to be just middle of the road. And then their reply to that will be like, "What? No Super Bowl ring this year?" It's like, well, yeah, I'm not. What the hell? I'm not saying we're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm saying we need to win 9 or 10 games to win the NFC South. Like, what's going on here? So I agree 100%. We didn't pay Derek Carr to be the MVP. He's getting paid league average. He's not getting paid $250 million. He's not getting paid $300 million. We don't expect him to be a top 5 guy. We don't expect him to be Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. So we're not asking him. At no point was that the plan. The plan was to give us a sort of stability. The plan was to give us a veteran, a nice stable quarterback who has been in the league, who we know has had success in the league. That's it. Just do that. And if he does that, we'll be fine. So, kind of reeling in like what the Saints are expecting from Carr, but also what the Saints are expecting just in general. Like the Saints are in it's not a rebuild, but we are in this transitionary period where we're installing a new offense, a new culture. We're trying to fix some things. The Saints were bad a couple years ago. They weren't great last year, but the results were still middle of the road. And so now it's like, let's keep that in place. Let's keep the core, but now let's instill this new offense and this new identity, and let's try and have a couple ticks up. So, no, I don't think we're going to compete for the Super Bowl. No, I don't think we're going to compete for the NFC. I do think we can compete for the NFC South. I do think we can fight for double-digit wins. I do think we could be hosting a playoff game. And that is certainly good enough for this season. It's certainly a relevant season. And it's just like, again, it blows my mind when people are like, it's Super Bowl or bust. No, it's not. That is a really bad way to look at it. You're telling me that winning playoff games, hosting playoff games, competing for your division, double-digit wins, conference championship appearances, conference championship wins, you're telling me all of that, Super Bowl appearances, you're telling me all of that is irrelevant unless you win a Super Bowl? That's just not true. It's just not the case. If the Saints win 10 games, win the South, host a playoff game, win a playoff game, and then lose in the next round, you think I'm going to sit here and say, like, well, wasted season because we didn't win the Super Bowl? No. That'd be a horrible way to watch the sport. So, I agree. We need Carr to be average. We need Carr to be consistent. And if he does that, the Saints can be good enough to win the South, host a playoff game, do what the goals that we've set for this season.
It's not like it was a bad season. He showed a lot of really good decision-making. However, when he was not making good decisions, he was holding on the ball too long, taking sacks, not getting rid of the pill, and, stalling out the offense. So at times, it was really, really frustrating. But to give Carr his flowers, there was some really good things as well. And I do believe for number 41, there is still gas in the tank. I don't think that we have seen the end of the domination of the Alvin Kamara era. Bars. I do believe that after last season, it was a down year, but when we come back to 2024, we'll see production, I think, a little bit closer to what we saw in 2021. I don't think that Kamara is a player that you should count out quite yet. I will say this, he hasn't averaged over 4 yards per carry since 2020, which he averaged 5 yards.
Yeah, I think Kamara is another one where you can obviously tell when Kamara's at his best. Where he's not his best is just pounding him up the middle. Pause. Is where he's not his best is just running him in between the tackles. But that's just that's the player he is. Like, we know how good he can be and how dangerous he can be. in certain situations. Get him in those situations. I don't care that he's not great on a halfback lead dive the same way that DeAndre Swift is, or the same way that David Montgomery is, because those guys aren't as good as Alvin Kamara running a wheel route or running a deep post route. Like, get him where he's successful. I'm not sitting here saying that Alvin Kamara is, he's going to be your bell cow back, 260 carries right up the middle, and he's going to get you 1,400 yards. And quite frankly, I don't want to see him do that. I don't want to see him even attempt to do that, right? I know where he's good. I want to see him getting the ball in space. I want to see him, the last place I want to see him is running in between the tackles. So if that means that they can get him back to doing what he does best, I'm all for it. And again, the thing with Kamara, I think Kamara can be really, really good in the Kubiak system, because he has the skill set to do what Kubiak's going to ask him to do. Do I care if he ends up with 1,200, 1,300 yards? No. I don't care if he splits time with Kendra Miller and combined they have blank amount of numbers. I don't care who has the numbers. I just care that when they're on the field, they're being utilized the proper way. I use the Dolphins running back room, I talk about them the same way. Raheem Mostert, and you combine him with A-Chain, solid. If you're a Dolphins fan, do you care that A-Chain's taking numbers from Mostert or Mostert's taking numbers from A-Chain? No. You just care that the numbers are there, right? So I think Kamara will get back to some of the glory days. Like, if you look at what makes me absolutely sick to my stomach is 75 catches for 466 yards. The fact that look at this. He almost had 30 more receptions, but only about 30 more yards comparing 2023 to 2021. It just goes to show you the lack of creativity and when he got the ball. It was just dump pass after dump pass after dump pass. If we get back to this, if we get back to the 190 carries, 900 yards, 16 touchdowns is a lot, but 83 receptions, 756 yards, we get somewhere in that world. That's what I want to see. That's where I'm at.
On the dot, which was pretty solid. However, in terms of the 2023 receiving numbers, he only had 6.2 yards per catch, which was the worst of his career.
Yeah,
so
horrible.
I want to see him utilized better in the pass game. I want to see him utilized more effectively on the ground. And I do believe with better offensive play and better offensive play calling, especially in the trenches as well, that can be a really big thing in 2024, considering Kubiak wants to ground this offense once again. And I'm not going to even sit here and say Alvin Kamara is going to be the biggest beneficiary. I think all the running backs will benefit from Klint Kubiak. I think Kendre Miller, he showed a lot of promise. He showed a lot of really interesting things, especially at the end of the season in 2023. Jamal Williams, let's not forget, this was a player a couple seasons ago who led the league in rushing touchdowns with 17. If he's utilized correctly, I think he can still be an effective player. You just have
I don't think so. I think Jamal Williams is in a horrible situation. Because let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's say it's 3rd and 1 from the 1. Saints have to score a touchdown. What are you doing? Who are you giving the ball to? I bet a lot of you would say Taysom Hill, right? Okay, let's take Taysom out. Would you rather have Kamara in or Jamal Williams in that situation? Or would some of you say Kendre Miller? Problem is that in those situations, Jamal Williams is like the third option. I would rather have Taysom in on a 3rd down or a short yardage situation. That's why Taysom's there. All right, so Jamal's in a bad spot because he's not our first thought of a short yardage back, and he's not as dangerous as Kamara or Kendre Miller. So what exactly is he doing on the field? And if all he's doing on the field is like giving the whichever running back a spell, if that's his whole role, then how impactful can he really be? I don't think he can be that impactful. Kendre Miller, a lot of promise. Kendre Miller reminds me of when we're talking about the Falcons, how people are like, no, Drake London can be great. Kyle Pitts can be great. Bijan can be great. I keep hearing all this like Kendre Miller can be great. He had 170 yards last year. Like, I still need to see a little bit more before I'm like, yeah, let's just give this guy 70% of the shares here.
Have to use him in the proper manner. similar to Kendre Miller, similar to Alvin Kamara, hell, similar to Taysom Hill, who I think personally could be the biggest winner in terms of bringing in Klint Kubiak. Obviously, Derek Carr will be a big-time beneficiary because he is the quarterback of this offense. But I think Taysom Hill has a lot to gain from bringing in, or from Klint Kubiak being brought in to run the Saints offense. And Hill spoke about that not too long ago after one of the Saints OTAs, or actually at one of the Saints golf tournaments, said that I feel like Klint came in and had a really clear, distinct vision of what we were going to be offensively and how good we can be. I feel like he came in and he coached with a ton of detail, which has been really nice. I love the way that he's approached it, I feel like I'm a detail-oriented guy. I like to know what to do versus different looks, and that's very much so how he coaches. And I do think that Taysom Hill is going to not break out, but have a resurgence this year.
I'm not sure about this either, because what if I told you that Taysom Hill will take less than 10 snaps at quarterback? Would that impact your answer? Because I think for a lot of people it would, right? If Taysom Hill is just a tight end, or he's just like a wingback kind of thing, like, again, how impactful can he be? I don't think Kubiak will use him a lot as a quarterback. I think Kubiak is comfortable having Derek Carr do that. So I think Taysom may have some plays, but the Taysom experiment of a couple of years ago, I don't think is going to be the thing. I think Taysom will be useful when he is called upon, but I think he's closer to like a specialty player, or he will be moving forward, than let's get this guy 12, 13, 14 touches. Now, the devil's advocate to that would say, well, the Saints are really good, or have been really good, record-wise, when Taysom gets above blank amount of carries. I would say this. The reason that they were good when Taysom was getting a large amount of carries back then is because when Taysom was getting the ball, that was the only bit of creativity that the Saints were doing. So the more, it's like a curve here where the more Taysom's getting the ball, the more creative the play calling is being. And the more creative play calling is being, the more successful a team's going to be. So that's why I think Taysom was kind of one of those correlations of the more he touches the ball, the better the Saints' record was. I just think Taysom will be used, but Taysom is not going to be used the way he was used a couple of years ago.
Not only in terms of the receiving ability, because he has been working with the tight ends, and Clancy Barone is really excited to utilize him as a tight end, but he's also been getting work with the fullbacks, and we know that he is effective as a ball carrier. We know that he can throw the ball if we wanted him to. And with Klint Kubiak, he can get really, really creative with Taysom Hill's usage, and I think that we can see the Storm and Mormon absolutely light the league on fire. But
I don't think he'll light the league on fire. I think he'll be very impactful for a handful of plays. I think he'll be used creatively, but I do not think he'll get a large enough number of plays per game to quote-unquote light the league on fire.
I want to ask you this question, Saints fans. Who do you think is going to benefit the most from Klint Kubiak? Is it going to be Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill?
Trace, how much more do you want me to do? I got to type. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? I got to get a notepad here just to write down what all I got to do. I got to type yes or no in the comments. Okay, let me get my notepad. So I've got to write yes or no in the comments. Okay, I've got to go to chatsports.com/SaintsDad to get my Father's Day present. Okay, and now, I also had to sub. I had to sub for a win, right? And now we're doing sub for a dub. We had to sub for a dub. Okay, and now, damn, I got to go back to the comment section. I got to type what? AK for Alvin Kamara, TH for Taysom Hill, or DC for Derek Carr. Okay, good Lord. I got homework. I feel like I'm back in school. All right, so who benefits the most? AK, TH, or DC?
Derek Carr. Or if it's going to be somebody else, feel free to share their name in the comment section as well. But I want you to pick between these three, or if you think that there's somebody else.
Out of those three hombres, I would say Alvin Kamara. Derek Carr's number 2. Taysom's number 3. I would say Olave's 3 instead of Taysom, actually. But that's how I would do the benefits.
Shout their name out as well. So final thoughts on today's video to wrap up the show. I do believe that the New Orleans Saints are wildly underrated, and I think that they can make some big-time noise in 2024. I mean, who the hell is to say that the Falcons are going to be much, much better than the Saints?
Well said. I agree 100% with that.
They're not. Klint Kubiak, is a much better play caller, in my opinion, than what I think Zach Robinson will do.
Agreed.
I also really think that Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr are the same quarterback.
Agreed.
Raheem Morris is not a successful head coach.
Agreed.
Who in the hell is over here saying that the Falcons are dead set to win the NFC South? The Tampa
I think it's crazy.
Bay Buccaneers, sure, they're okay, but they won the division on a technicality, on a tiebreaker. So I think that everyone who is sitting here doubting the New Orleans Saints, keep that energy up when New Orleans is making noise in 2024.
Well, that's kind of the thing where you got like that is the part that gives me pause. Whenever people are like, the Saints are going to light the league on fire. The Saints are going to be take the league by storm. They're going to do all this stuff. Like, we're on a razor's edge. Do I think the Saints will be better? Yes. Do I think the Saints will surprise people? Yes. Do I think the Saints will win 12 games? No. Do I think the Saints will win 11 games? Maybe not. Okay. So, 8 wins, unsuccessful season. 9 wins, we're going to have to really get down into the weeds and see what's going on. 10 wins, we're cooking. We're cooking, baby. We're feeling good. Okay, we're dancing down Canal Street. Very dangerous thing to do. So we're right there. It is going to be a pressure-packed season. It is going to be a week-by-week season. And I'll tell you this, too. We could just delete the damn YouTube channel if we lose in week 1. Because we're saying all this stuff. We're talking about all this, like 9 wins, 10 wins, whatever. If we lose to the Panthers in the Dome in week 1, I'll probably just lay face down right there in the aisle and just lay there and just evaporate. So Saints got to take care of business against the bad teams. We got to try and surprise 1 or 2 good teams. And we're looking for like that 10-win NFC South division host a playoff game. That is the ultimate goal. That is the ultimate realistic goal. I could be wrong. This could be like a Disney Channel movie where the Saints all of a sudden are, truly the surprise team, and we just come out of absolutely nowhere. That always is a possibility, but there is a fine line between what would be a step forward for us, what would be a good season, and that's another thing. Don't get this twisted either. People are like, well, if we went 9-8 last year, but we got better, how is 9-8 not our floor? It's like, well, obviously, because the schedules aren't the same. Like, there's so many different variables. So much happens, right? So, I mean, I don't have to explain that to all of you, but it is. I am being realistic, and I think that a good, positive season would be chasing the division. It would be. I didn't even realize the freeze frame here for Trace, but I think that 10-11 wins. Like 11 is nuts. 11 is crazy. 10 wins, and we have a very promising situation on our hands here for sure.
Let Klint Kubiak cook. Let's bring this offense back into a resurgence and let the defense continue to dominate. I hope you enjoyed today's video, Saints fans. Y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time.
Good stuff, Trace. Good stuff, my man. What a guy. Nothing but energy. I love the headset, too. When he puts that headset on, it's time to roll. Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, get on down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. We covered a lot there. We covered what it's going to look like, how the team is going to progress, the biggest beneficiaries. We got a lot of homework. We got to comment like 3 or 4 different times. We got to go to chatsports.com. We got to do a lot. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still with me. By the way, I think I'm going to go live again Thursday. And same thing, 6 p.m. Same thing as last week. I had a lot of fun. So I think we're going to do that again. So keep your eyes on my Twitter, and I'll let you know officially. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you in the next video.